pandemic is not helping anyone, but people are going back to work, have been going back to work. And for those who are still out of work, I would encourage you to do a checkup of sorts and ask yourself questions like, is my resume working? I mean, is my resume producing results? And if it's not, that would be the first place that I would go and ask yourself questions like, do I have a clear career summary, which is a 4 or 5 sentence at most, forward looking summary of your career and where you want to go next? Because if you don't have that, you really don't have a bedrock to build your entire job search around. And Mark, as you know, it is startling the number of people that do not realize that the term job objective at their top of their resume is a huge turnoff for HR managers because of the fact that they don't really honestly care what your job search objective is. They want to know enough about you that they can read very quickly and decide if it's worth their time to go any farther. And I heard a statistic a couple of weeks ago, which I still find kind of surprising, which is that after all of your hard work on your resume, after all of the rework that you've done on your resume, at most, when an HR manager is going to open up your resume, you're going to get 10 seconds. And if you don't have everything right, they're just going to pass and go on to the next person. So that's one thing I would encourage our viewers to look at. And we've also talked about in prior sessions, and will again in future, is how vital a robust LinkedIn profile is. Because in my experience, I mean, recruiters have told me right and left, if they're impressed with a resume, then the next place they're going to go is your LinkedIn profile. And if the two don't sync up, then again, you've struck out, because they are looking for an overall impression of you across all of the multiple channels that there are to job search. And I have more suggestions, but Mark, I know with the book that you wrote that you have a number of suggestions. And if I could, I'd like to bounce it back to you.
Sure. There's several things that came in my mind, and it's obvious you spent the language you use. You spent time in my book, but I think that I've come across recently as well is there are people who've actually had success in getting interviews. And that they've been able to get referrals, and they make it to the last part of the interviews, and then it doesn't work out for them. I've had people come to me with who've been in, and I think we've talked about this before a few weeks ago, about the people who've had 8 to 10 interviews, and then they don't go on to the last round. 8 to 10 interviews is ridiculous to me. I don't see how can, I guess, one of the things I guess I learned from the last great recession and the time that we've had here in the pandemic is how employers all of a sudden become so focused and, to me, some degree petty about somebody's experience. You brought them in, you've compared them to other folks, but you don't hire them. And many times it's not because, you have 3 to choose from, they're all similar, but you did it eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I don't buy into that. That's a behavior that's a pattern now. And I'm concerned that Every time there's a crisis, you go and hire, and then you get gun shy as far as what candidate. I don't know what brings this on. I don't believe that. The whole idea as well is that, well, nobody was really qualified out of all those candidates that you put through the process. You get few hundred candidates. And to me, if you get a few hundred candidates and then you end up hiring nobody, or you're taking such a long time, I don't believe that. And that's where my empathy kind of kicks in with job seekers, is that you're dealt a very bad hand. Having said that, though, I think for those of you who've gone in and after several sessions, there's an examination. And I think people need to kind of shift their way they look at it. They need to stop looking at the resume. They need to start looking at the cover letter, because that got you in the door. Not a problem. What's also got you in the door for the fact that you have some credibility and expertise when you presented yourself, especially if you've been time after time after time. That's really great. Where I think what happens is, and I've asked and have I inquired of those who've been through that, is that they don't need more tools, and to some degree they don't need more advice. They just need to deepen. They need to deepen with the things that they've already performed well at. In other words, you were able to get the referral. When you got a referral, did you stop at that referral once you got in the door to get to the interviews? Where I suggest that you go ahead and you continue getting intel that will help you supply and deepen your knowledge about the company and about the people that you interview with. Now, I know that might be a little counter to intuitive, but I believe the more people you talk to within a company, as you get a referral from your referrals, that you kind of build a network already within that company, that they can either go and seek out people who are interviewing you and all continue to vouch for you, which there's nothing wrong with having more than one person actually say, hey, I heard you interview. How did it go? They don't have to dig deep, but just because they asked about you and gotten several inquiries is going to make them think several times about you and make you more memorable in their eyes. So that's something I would definitely deploy the next time you get those opportunities. The second thing is that when you start landing in your job, you'll have a network already to help you through the initial process, especially during the onboarding. So that way you have support right there, and that you're able to go ahead and you'll feel better. And studies show that people who have referrals last longer than people who come from cold calling or coming from the outside that are non-referral. So I think that's one solid tip that everybody can get if you've been in that situation and you've gotten past it. Don't go tweaking your resume more. Don't go tweaking your cover letter more. Don't just stop at referrals. You still continue to dig, because sometimes even you don't get to red flags for yourself until you get deep into the hiring process and the interview process. So you want to keep your ears up, and that you could also ask deeper questions as you go deeper into the interview process. So I've been thinking a lot about that lately. I think that is where a lot of people will also need to try to go when they move, since some people are moving on the process, but just don't get across the finish line.
Absolutely. And, to reinforce what you've said, one of the things that I'm seeing are a lot of very fickle human resource managers that put people through the entire drill. And as you said, don't hire. And then 2 months, maybe 3 months later, you see the exact same ad or position again. And they just grind through these people with the thought that there is the one perfect candidate out there. And if they only talk to enough people and run the ad enough times, that person will appear. Uh, all along, they're doing without this person,
Mhm.
and in fact, and I've seen this happen too, get down to one or two people, and then just everything stalls. And then, it'll go on for 6, 8 months like that until things
Mhm.
pick back up again. And there's never an explanation given. And it's just kind of the nature of the beast. And what I always like to reinforce to our viewers is
Mhm.
that studies have shown that um, 6 out of every 10 positions that you have interviewed for will fall away without your ability to plan, anticipate, or control. Those are just the numbers. And
Yeah.
if it happens to you, steam, full speed ahead.
Mhm.
And when I get someone who said, "Oh, I have this great interview," I say, "You know what? That's great. Now go out and find another three, because having three more active positions on the horizon is a great cushion for if the current position you're interviewing for, if for whatever reason, does not work out."
Yeah, and I would even say the more you can get more than three interviews, and in fact, I think job seekers are afraid that that people will be insulted if you have a lot of choices. You know what I mean? It's okay that maybe you have even 5 or 6 interviews where people are, you're at two of those interviews are final. One is at the beginning stage. One you just had your first interview with. One you're in the second or third interview with, because we don't know what each company is going to do as far as how many interviews it's going to take. I think you need to continue to also ask those questions. Okay, what is the next step? And ask, how many steps are there to get to the final interview? That is a good litmus test, because that will tell you, one, is that how intentional the company is.
Yes.
And secondly, if they can't answer that question, you need to put that in your mind, in the back of your mind, so that you can compare it to a company that is more intentional about the way they go about. Because again, you are also interviewing them. And this is the way that you look at how they carry on the business. If they can't get their act together as far as how many people interview, what they have in mind, that is a red flag for you. And you have to be the one and be strong enough and have enough leverage, because when you have a lot of interviews and you have a lot of things going on, that's leverage. That means you can walk away, and you can
Yes.
walk away from a company that has a lot of uncertainty about the way they run business. If they, believe me, if they have uncertainty about the way they run business, they have uncertainty in the way of keeping up business. I think it would, the two mirror each other. I can't say that's across the way, but you are taking a risk if you should decide to go with somebody who just seems to always be changing the narrative as far as what the process is looked at. And I think you should ask that at every single interview, so that they know that you are also holding them accountable for the way that they treat you, and perhaps they might be treating other people. So I think, again, I'm not worried about giving you more tools if things aren't going well. I think, and that's available. We could do that. But I think very often we need to deepen the tools and deepen the use of the tools that we have here. And I think too, when you are managing several interviews, you continue to deepen your network within those the interview process and companies that you know. You might even get a no, and it might mean more of a not yet than a no, you're not useful. So if it is a good company and it is somebody that that it just doesn't work out and they feel like you just missed it by the hair of your chin, then you can go ahead and continue to build relationships, keep those relationships that you built already, so that when the next one comes around, you can deploy all those people you've connected with to make a stronger case of how you can, advance in interviews and finally go over, because there's an overwhelming amount of people that you connected with. So I think that would be a great big key. And I'm glad we talked about this, because there's this idea that you mentioned bedrock, and I think I know exactly what you're referring to. There's a story I wrote a few years back that I included in the ebook where there's a apartment building in San Francisco called the Millennial Building, or it was a Millennial Park. I forget exactly what it is, but still to this day, because that building's not in the bedrock, the
Ah,
building keeps shifting,
mm-hmm.
like a little bit by a little bit. And even though the lean isn't particularly normal or isn't noticeable, because the building is shifting, it also threatens everything else around it, and all of that. And the thing is about when you get deeper into your interview and you build your tools and build your network is strong, you're building more of a bedrock. And the more you're into the bedrock, you can be as stable and be look like a strong candidate. Because that building isn't in the bedrock, it's deep into the sand, it's going to keep shifting. And that's what employers really don't want. They don't want somebody who keeps shifting, keep moving to whatever direction. They want something that's strong, and you want to show that. So that's another reason why I say build deeper and not have more toys laying on the floor. Play with the one toy, so to speak. Did you want to add to that before we go on?
Just a couple of thoughts. The first one is if you are working with multiple companies simultaneously, believe it or not, you're going to be a much stronger candidate in the eyes of the employer, and you're going to interview much better
Mhm.
because this is not I gotta get this position. It's one of, this is a great position, but I have another four that I'm working on. So you'll come across as confident. And then the other thing to think about is I know we're coming, thank God, more to the other side of the pandemic, but you still
Mhm.
have many people working at home and trying to coordinate meetings, discussions, evaluations of candidates, et cetera, does take much longer. And you could have done everything right, but there is this much longer lag time in between decisions that you need to factor into the process.
Mhm.
And keep going, keep interviewing, keep finding new positions, and then just let that one kind of simmer on the back burner. And if it comes to fruition, that's great. If it's not, you don't have all your eggs in one basket,
Right.
and you're doing yourself a huge favor by moving on and letting that simmer while you continue your forward efforts uh, on your road to your next great position.
Yeah. Uh, Annette Richmond, thank you very much. She is a former recruiter who's now a career coach, and I believe she also writes resumes. She says, so true. Keep looking until you're working in your new job. And you know what I'm going to say, right? You keep looking till after you get that new job, because these days, at least in some formal way, that you are also continue to building connections, that you're also learning something new. You're also are forward thinking in the way that you look at your industry. Uh, and maybe you can even make a determination you don't see yourself going a whole lot further in that industry, and that maybe you'll need to make a pivot now. So, job search now is a lifestyle. It takes way too long. It takes way too long for people to connect the dots from the time they get laid off or they quit, or for whatever reason they decide to separate themselves from the company, to even gear up to the next job. And, I think people who were on that long-term employment and are still long-term employment, I mean, this might apply to you, but for some people, it took them 2 or 3 months to get their energy and to get and start to build some sort of strategy. And even I think when people start building strategy, they haven't built a solid strategy. They know that they only know that they're looking for jobs and they're applying online and that they're asking a few of their friends. And really, this is not a matter of in 2021 and going forward that technology moves way too fast. People are moving around a whole lot more. And there are some savvy job seekers who are going to be the ones to contest you in your job search if you're taking way too long. Because now we have all the tools to job search as a lifestyle. We have our phone, which is really the main thing that people have. They have a computer at their hands at all times to particularly activate their job search, even if they're not looking for another job. They're continuing their career development in a way that makes a lot more sense. That I'm learning the next thing, I'm knowing about the next trend, I'm reading articles that is going to determine whether if I can solve a problem or if I'm really interested in solving the problem. So all of that to say is that cannot put your life on hold when you put your job search on hold. Essentially, that's just the honest truth that people cannot gather around. And I mean, people are willing, you can't even depend on, I mean, I know our parents say you do a great job and the company will take care of you, still kind of exists. And it's your generation's fault for passing that kind of false information around today. And you can tell the ones that grew up who really, and God bless you, you want to follow your parents' advice. But for some parents, they are been in the job for 30 years and they've been out of touch with what the job market's really like. So, if anything, at least listen to the words that continue to develop your career throughout your career. Always have the options open, always be ready to be reached out to and to reach out to others to continue that discussion on what's going to make you the best candidate, even at the last moment of any kind of employment catastrophe. So let's move on a little bit here, though. I kind of like parking in this space, and we do this a lot too. We always end up talking about interviewing because I think that's where a lot of people don't fail to get interviews. Ultimately, they just fail to finish. Is that something you see very often? I mean, no matter how lousy the resume often is, a lot of times you'll get at least one interview out of that, and you may continue to not impress anyone, but at least somebody will be willing to talk to you, even if you have a lousy resume. Let's say you get a referral. And because the referral, you get the interview. Because you get the referral doesn't mean you automatically will advance an interview. That means they'll talk to you because that person has referred you. Is that something that you have seen in lately or experienced lately?
Every now and again, my concern when that happens is that the person isn't properly prepared, and that sometimes is I hate to say it, but a wasted opportunity. And if I have the opportunity to intercede but before the interview, even with the bad or crappy resume, we'll go through a very intense exercise so that the person is properly prepared. when they go in. Usually, a person whose resume is not good is someone who, bless them for trying, has tried to do the resume themselves using outmoded tools or techniques. And if you were going through the process any other way, your resume would stick out like a sore thumb in terms of one to quickly step aside. But if you have a sponsor, then that makes a huge difference. And one other thing I'd like to circle around very quickly on is, Mark, you're absolutely right. You're always in job search mode. And the more people that you can touch and help along the way, the more visible you can be in your vendor community, the more articles that you write on LinkedIn, and the more curated your LinkedIn community is, the more effective you're going to be as an employee and also as a future employee, because the best career move I ever made came out of the blue, and I had just had the crap smacked out of me, and I would slithered under my door to answer the phone, and it was opportunity knocking for a position that was never advertised because it was an executive recruiter, but I was ready, and I was very fortunate, and everyone who's working needs to be prepared because, as you said, the term that I hate the most when I hear human resources talking about it is the term human assets, because we're not assets, we're people. When we get old and maybe a little bit rusty, that doesn't mean that we should be kicked to the curb like a piece of machinery. But again, going back to your point, everything you said was right on the money as usual.
Yeah, there's only a very small percentage of folks who are actually passive candidates in that sense. I think the idea of the passive candidate is going to go away. That people can really, there are very few people can be a passive candidate. And we could even argue the fact that you maybe, if you're making job search as a lifestyle, if you've already incorporated that perhaps you might be that passive candidate, and that's okay. I guess we can argue the semantics later, but I think ultimately that people will need to be active candidates and consider themselves active. We have a Michael Joyce in our waiting room. Did you invite people to the Zoom? Okay, I just want to be sure to, before I admit him, Damian invites some of his group to join us here on the Zoom call. And we're gonna keep him in the chat side of it. And if you have a question, Michael, feel free to put that in the chat. We appreciate you joining us. One of the challenges that I find very often in trying to explain and try to implore on folks is they come to, a lot of times people come to us in desperate state. They are looking at us for advice to save them, sometimes from advice that we've given them. They botched up, then they come back, and then they're trying to salvage what they've done. And sometimes I think people, we hope that the advice that we give, like on platforms like these and the things that they've read in articles they've read or they've heard us in the media talking about, that they'll take it and customize it to their own needs. I think it's not particularly a trick, but needs to be an understanding that you can go to 2 or 3 different experts and still not make the gains that you need to make because you're not taking and applying it to your particular situation, and listen to some of the dialogue and some of the things that you say, and get the feedback. And sometimes the feedback is enough to put your put yourself at risk and make yourself an unviable candidate, so to speak.
I can remember many occasions where job searchers would come to the organization or would come to me as a career coach. And one of the first things I'd ask to see is their resume. And sure enough, they had gone to see another quote unquote expert and had taken all of the work that we did and rearranged it and et cetera, diluting everything that we had worked on. And basically I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, I've been in this business for almost 30 years. You're not going to hurt my feeling. But what you need to do is find one job philosophy that you can embrace and follow that. Don't allow yourself to be deluded, because if you go on the internet or you talk to different people, one person says to tell you to do this and another one says tell you to do that. And by the time you're done, you're completely confused. So find an expert that you believe in, that resonates with you, and listen to them. Because if you don't listen to them, then you're doomed to continue to create all of the different mistakes.
Unless they're the wrong expert.
Exactly right. And what I was going to say is that if the person that you're investing your time and your talent in hasn't been out of work, then I would be very careful, because unless you've had your nose rubbed into the mud of unemployment, like we both have, your perspective could be different. And I would not be sitting here today if I had not lost my job a number of times, and not be afraid to stand up and say, here are some things that work. They've been reality tested, I guess is my point.
Right. And I want to encourage, if Destiny, if you're still there, Vanette's still there, you can also feel free to chime in because of you guys' very lengthy experience in this space. That also helps to get a recruiter's point of view as well. Some of you are really good strategists in this area. I really believe that here's the thing. There's just sometimes that some people make more sense than others. There just is. And we can discuss, how we go about what tools that we're going to employ, because what expert is going to be. I think one of the things that it has to make sense for you to take someone's advice. And to some degree, there are some people, there are experts that are very safe and have been giving the same advice for many years now. There are some things that work for the past 30, 40, 50 years, like networking. Networking will always work without a doubt. Resume advice often is arguable, but there are just some things that just make a lot of sense. I just think, and I'm not trying to critique anyone's work here at all. I don't want to spend that kind of time here, but very often you can look at different resume writers, and they may say something, they may say the same things, but differently. And both of them may not lead you to the right path. Where I've seen that. Having that to say that, I've seen people get jobs, and I've been on the other end as far as a hiring manager, where someone had terrible resume, but because they're well connected and they have a clue as to what they're doing and what they're talking about, they'll still get through the process and still get the job. People have gotten jobs based on, even if they've had spelling errors and grammar errors and so forth. People have done that. I've unfortunately been on the hiring end because there's some political force at large that's beyond me. But at the same time, for most people, that it's even executives who are not direct communicators when it comes to the resume. And I'll use the verb direct. I'm not going to, we can banter back and forth about what's good and what's not good, but they're not very direct in what they want and what they want to say. Yes. And I think that's very important when it comes to a resume, even when you present yourself, that you are asking direct questions and that you expect direct answers. And if you don't get direct and honest answers, then you might be in the wrong place. And I think that's what very often it tips us off. And that's why I think it's always worth parking in the interview lot more as often as we do, because that's where a lot of people tend to either they settle or they miss the opportunities and the things that people are saying to take advantage of and be able to present themselves in such a way.
Mm-hmm. And just real quick, the longer I have the opportunity and the privilege to work with folks, the more flexible I have become in terms of resume format and viewpoints, because there's nobody out there that knows it all. Right. And people do have different perspectives, but by far the most important thing is to go with something that resonates with you. Because if it resonates with you, it will make the very hard process, quite honestly, of building an outstanding resume easier, because you'll understand the whys and the wherefores and what have you. And I've seen multiple forms of resumes in different formats, and you know what? I'm fine with that. And at a future date, we can talk about the universal portions of a resume that everyone should have. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as they have those and they communicate it in an easy to read fashion, and it's packed with problem, action, result statements, I'm okay.
Yeah. Maybe we need to have somebody like Annette, who's in our chat, who's watching the show. She can maybe even come on the show at some particular point, and we could talk all resume. That is not my steed. I used to own a resume company. When you first met me, I had one. I've heard all the dialogue. I don't necessarily keep up with all the X's and O's as much as I did, but she makes a point in the chat. She says most of her clients come to her without a resume or really old one because they've gotten through other jobs through referral, but now they need one when they become active job seekers. And I think that's a great thing. If you don't need a resume to make it through several different jobs. I had a client like that years ago where she went through 25 years of her job history without having a resume because it's been all built on her reputation. That's awesome. But and I think to some degree you could do that if you're willing to do that kind of work. In other words, if you do write articles on LinkedIn, let's say you do a few podcasts along the way, let's say you even do some media, if you're in that kind of profession where those kind of things are valued, you can continue on because your work is documented. And I think that's one of the things that I think more people are going to start doing. They're going to start documenting how they become what they become. And that's what LinkedIn is for, is that documentation, right? You can put the slide share up, you could put the PDFs up, you can list the publications that you've written for. Have you written white papers? Although most people will say white papers are dead, white papers are very relevant because those are research, especially the peer review papers. Those are the sweet spot. That really proves that you have a deep knowledge because you've done hours and hours of research to come up with that paper with the team, more than likely, or by yourself. So I think in these days, even video. And I want to just take a hot second to even talk about, I don't know if you realize that there's a new feature on LinkedIn where people can actually start recording videos now. So when you go to their page, you can see that play button activated and you can play their latest video and use that sort of as a way to warm up a person to you when they come in front. And we had an argument, not an argument, but discussion on Wednesday's show about how useful it is. And then before that, there was a Twitter discussion that a bunch of career coaches, including myself, had discussed what the value of a video. And I think Annette was a part of a discussion from last Friday. So I've been through this a few times where is it advantageous for a video or not? I come from the school, at least in this day and age, that video now is the regular. It's going to be embraced, whether it's going to be useful or not. People are going, because people want to know people, and that's one of the best ways to get to know people. And using video, even if it takes you several tries to make it a good video, that could be late. But even now, as we speak, because I created the show on my stream, when you go to my page, that video of this discussion is taking place. So the first thing you see, you don't have to go anywhere. It's playing right now. So any thoughts on that? Because there's several layers that we can dissect a little bit. And I think, too, we consider the world that we're in. People are video interviewing. Mm-hmm. So the more exposure that people have to video interviews, even if you don't get the positive or the negative feedback right away, it could make a big difference in the long term if we become comfortable with it.
I agree. My only caution is to make sure that your video looks good, that it's well lit, that you have a microphone that picks up everything that you're saying. And also, don't be afraid to give it multiple attempts, because your video becomes the window to your world, and it breathes life into your profile. And yeah, absolutely. Video is the future. I don't think we'll ever go back to video resume because of EEOC requirements. But yes, absolutely. I am an advocate of well-produced videos on your LinkedIn page because it adds so much, and also moves you up in terms of how well your LinkedIn profile is done, because I would estimate easily that 95% of the people on LinkedIn will not use that feature. So it's a great way for you to stand up, be seen, and feel proud.
I plan to use that feature. I plan to keep that. I don't know how it's going to be positioned when I get it all said and done. But when people come to my page this weekend, this will be the first thing that they're going to see. They're going to see this particular live stream. They're going to see you and I having this dialogue because it's my wheelhouse, right? It is
Right.
mine and your wheelhouse. We want people to see our interviews. People get to know us, and people want to have further contact with us. It's going to be contingent on how we present it. So I'm pretty comfortable at this particular point because I do 2 live stream shows, and then I do other interviews with video and what have you. I'm very comfortable. But when we started last October, I think we started the show. I was a nervous wreck. I hated video at that particular time, even though I've done it. But I'm quite comfortable now because it is what it is. And I don't know if I'm not going to get better looking either. So, that people are
Makes
kind of
two of us.
stuck. Yeah, people are going to get stuck with what they get. So there we go. But also it's an advantage too. It's a competitive advantage because people get to know you when they see your face. And I think that's going to be important. And Net comes back and say, we got to have Net. We're going to probably end up inviting you for the show next week. So just get ready to get an invite here. Just found out the cover story needs to be added to the LI app. It's not on the app, but it is on the desktop. At least from what I saw, just like the name pronunciation, gotta bounce. Have a great weekend. Okay, thanks for joining us, Annette. Look for a message from me. Destiny, I want to hear what you got to say if you're still around. Thanks for joining us as well. And thanks for the rest of you for joining us. If you haven't introduced yourself yet, just continue to introduce yourself. Annette is not alone here in the chat. There are other people, but they might be kind of shy. And Michael, too, if you have a question, use the chat portion to write a question if you do. If you don't, you're cool. I think, though, having said that, people using these tools to present themselves the best way possible, the quicker and the more information an employer and a recruiter has on you, they can move forward with you. You know what I mean? The video exposes who you are. You're not going to tell a lot that I've got a thermostat behind me, and that's it. You might notice the temperature that I have if you could see it. If you can't, I don't care. But I think people get carried away though because they're afraid to see that their dog or their cat may come up on the screen. I think there's certain behaviors that are okay. There might be faux pas, but that it will work out okay if you have an interview that reveals a little bit about yourself, although you'll need to kind of customize that somewhere along the way so that it'll be somewhat neutral, because people get offended by anything these days. They'll see a cat run across the screen. Oh, I hate cats. They see a dog. I hate dogs. And they'll use any, they might be even biased towards the colors that we're wearing, the yellow or blue. But I think ultimately, the more that people tend to know you and get to know you as far as your personality, that is a plus and not a minus in this discussion.
Absolutely. And, it's a chance for someone to get an impression of you over and above everything you've written. I mean, if you have a professional write your resume and then you do a video and you can't put 4 sentences together, that's going to really contrast with everything else you've been trying to build. And also with video becoming so available, there are very few people out there, and I'm certainly not one of them, that is perfect, calm, and composed, and comes across exactly the way that you would expect a polished news anchor to come across as. And what I have found when I was doing network television is the best thing that you can do is be yourself. And, when you listen to Mark, I mean, you hear someone who is obviously very committed, wants to help, is very sincere, and is prepared to answer your questions. And that comes across in the tone of his voice, in his body language, in his eye contact, all very important things. And you can do the same thing and add that to your LinkedIn profile. And again, stand above many, many others just because you've given the employer one more nugget of information that you have volunteered, which most people will not, for a number of very good reasons, I'm sure, not.
Yeah, yeah. And that could be the solid difference. You should never diminish every single opportunity you may get that may have a positive impression on you. And that could be very helpful to you. We're coming close to our hour. Did you want to add anything that we've kind of embellished on thus far?
Just one thought, and
Mhm.
that is we are job searching in uncertain times,
Mhm.
in unproven ground, where the rules can shift daily. And what I would like to do for those listening today, is offer encouragement and hope, because what we do every Friday provides hope and lets you know that there are two people out there that really care about you and your job search, and probably most importantly, have been there. And when you work with people who have been there, regardless of where they are in the spectrum of the job searching world, uh, you have found two people that are prepared to help. And as always, I like to say that it is a privilege and an opportunity every time I get a chance to work with you and with Mark. Thank you.
Yep, I echo the same sentiments as well. That this is what we do. Spend our Fridays. Since we're old pros at this, there's not many questions that we can't answer together to provide perspective. Although, if there is, we can go find out, and sometimes even bring experts in utilizing our network, uh, uh, you know, folks that we know, career coaches and resume writers and career counselors and people who are psychotherapists who are also in the field, that they're also at the fingertips and will jump at every opportunity to be here. So we're going to have some guests here in the next few weeks. Like I said, I think one person I'm going to send invite for. I've seen enough of her content to bring her on the show for next Friday, and there'll be other people as well. I want to also let you know, if you don't know already, our Wednesday show, Job Seeker Nation, is happening every Wednesday at this same time. So you can also follow that. I created articles where you can find all of those shows, each of those shows on their own page. So you just have to look for one place, which I wish LinkedIn would go ahead and build a spot where if you have live streams, that they can find all your live streams that you're associated with in one spot, instead of people having to chase down someone's timeline in order to find the show. So I'm hoping that change will make it as well. But if you have any questions at all about anything that we talked about today, feel free to contact either one of us. We'll even get in on a chat with the both of us can get on a chat with a singular or several people that we can keep up during the week. And that way we can continue to answer your questions, because we're here for you. We want to do this for you. We want to do for those who are, the people have real problems and have real life dilemmas. I can't bring every question I often get, though some of them are so sensitive that we can't even talk about the situations, because there's so, there's one where this person's a high profile person in the Midwest that actually contacted me not that long ago. And if I had started talking about that person, half of people would know who she is. So but other than that, for most people, I like for us to answer those questions in this kind of setting, because it applies to a lot of folks, not just one. So that's why we like doing it here as well. So unless any of you have any other questions in the chat, we can go ahead and sign off for the week. This is the Modern Job Search Checklist. We're here every Friday, 1 p.m. That is Damian Burkle. You can reach him at jobsearching.org. You can reach me at thevoiceofjobseekers.com. Follow our timelines, connect with us, write us a little note, and even to let us know how we've helped you and how we can help you in the future. Rick, thank you very much, and good insight and good advice. Thanks, Rick. Hopefully we were helpful to you as well. It is sometimes rough to see everybody on the chat. I actually can't use what we have. I have to use my iPad to help facilitate some of the comments, because some of the other software that's associated so far is kind of hard to see the way that we're set up. We'll probably have to change the way we're set up in the future. In the meantime, thank you very much. You all have a good day. Damian, you hold on for a hot second, and the rest of you stopping the live stream, have a great weekend and be productive as much as you possibly can and remain safe. Thank Michael for joining us here live on the Zoom call. Appreciate it. And thank you all very much.
Happy Easter.
Okay. Hey, great show.
Thank you.
Great show.
Yeah, you and I just get started and we just go.
Well, I think it helps too, having covered so much on the other show, that I can, if anything happens, I can transfer the topics over here, and we can make it a live thing. One of the things I was thinking, I want to bring Annette on the show, because she is really, she has tons of experience. Maybe we can have a resume show next week, but
sure.
I also want to bring Jack on this show, as you're going to be on next Wednesday.
Yes, that'd be great.
So that's going to be a great experience. And that's a very fast-paced show, because Jack knows how to talk.
Yes, I've seen that.
Jack can talk. So I think we got a lot of great stuff here. So I'm very proud of this, and I'm glad that we're able to do it. But I'm not concerned as much of being focused on my ebook. I'm focused more about getting the information out there. So however it turns out, we were able to give great information. I had no notes. I just remember the discussions I had in the past week, and just brought them here and, made it come alive. So
yes, you did.
So that was great. So no concerns whatsoever regarding that. That was really it. So you'll be seeing a LinkedIn chat. It will have me, you, Lauren, and Jack. I'll probably put the show out there for promotion tomorrow, or by tomorrow, or maybe later on today. Promote it in your group. promote it how you can, but that's going to be used for the Zoom link, and also the topics that will bounce back and forth in the show, and we'll come up with a collective between the four of us as to what are the topics that we'll answer, and that people will feel comfortable going forward with. You don't have to be comfortable with every aspect, but